Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So on this 31st day of July 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're reading Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, beginning chapter 17, Mother Parvati curses Citraketu. So I will read the chapter summary. The 17th chapter is summarized as follows. This chapter describes Citraketu's receiving the body of an asura, a demon, because of joking with Lord Śiva. I think more like laughing at Lord Śiva. When you joke with someone, you're all in on the joke, isn't it? Anyway. After personally talking with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Citraketu enjoyed life in his airplane with the women of the Vidyādhara planet. Engaging in the congregational chanting of the glories of the Lord, he began flying his plane and traveling in outer space. One day, while traveling like this, he wandered into the bowers of Sumeru Mountain. where he came upon Lord Śiva embracing Parvati, surrounded by an assembly of Siddhas, Cāraṇas, and great sages. Seeing Lord Śiva in that situation, Citraketu laughed very loudly. But Parvati became very angry at him and cursed him. Because of this curse, Citraketu later appeared as the demon Vṛtrāsura. Citraketu, however, was not at all afraid of Parvati's curse, and thus he spoke as follows. Everyone in human society enjoys happiness and distress according to his past deeds, and in this way travels in the material world. Therefore, no one is responsible for his happiness and distress. One is controlled by the influence of material nature in the material world, yet one thinks himself the doer of everything. In this material world, which is made of the external energy of the Supreme Lord, one is sometimes cursed and sometimes favored, and thus he sometimes enjoys in the upper planetary systems and sometimes suffers in the lower planets. But all these situations are the same because they are within this material world. None of these positions has any factual existence, for all of them are temporary. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate controller because the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated under his control, while he nonetheless remains neutral to these different transformations of the material world in time and space. The material external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in charge of this material world. The Lord helps the world by creating situations for the living entities within it. Thank you, Mukunda. Can you close that side door when you get a chance? Thanks. Close quote. When Citraketu spoke in this way, all the members of the great assembly in which Lord Śiva and Parvati were present were astonished. Then Lord Śiva began speaking about the devotees of the Lord. A devotee is neutral in all conditions of life, whether in the heavenly planets or hellish planets, whether liberated from material world or conditioned by it, and whether blessed with happiness or subjected to distress. These are all merely dualities created by the external energy. Being influenced by the external energy, the living entity accepts a gross and subtle material body. And in this illusory position, he apparently suffers miseries, although everyone is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The so-called demigods consider themselves independent lords, and in this way they are misled from understanding that all living entities are part of the Supreme. This chapter concludes by glorifying the devotees and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now, text 1. Sri Shuka Uvacha Yatash Chantar Hito Anantas Tasyai Kritva Dishe Namaha Vidyādharash Citraketush Chakara Gagane Sharaha Sri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kritva Dishe Namaha Vidyādharash Citraketush Chachara Gagane Charaha Sri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kritva Dishe Namaha Vidyādharash Citraketush Chachara Gagane Charaha Sri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kritva Dishe Namaha Vidyādharash Citraketush Chachara Gagane Charaha Sri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kritva Dishe Namaha Vidyādharash Citraketush Chachara Gagane Charaha Sri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kritva Dishe Namaha Vidyādhara Citraketush Chachara Gagane Charaha. Shri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kridvadishe Namaha. Vidyādhara Citraketus Chachara Gagane Charaha. Shri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kridvadishe Namaha. Vidyādhara Citraketus Chachara Gagane Namaha. Shri Shuka Uvacha Yatas Chantar Hito Nantas Tasyai Kridvadishe Namaha. Vidyādhara Citraketus Chachara Gagane. Vijay Krishna, are you there? No, not there. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Shri Shukadev Goswami said, Yataha, in which direction? Cha, and. Antahitaha, disappeared. Anantaha, the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasyai, unto that. Kritva, after offering. Dishe, direction. Namaha, obeisances. Vidyādhara, the king of the Vidyādhara planet. Citraketu, Citraketu. Chachara, traveled. Gagane, in outer space. Charaha, moving. Translation, Srila Shukadev Goswami said, after offering obeisances to the direction from which Ananta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, had disappeared, Citraketu began traveling in outer space as the head of the Vidyādharas. So, no purport. I'll read the English. Being praised by great sages, this is verse 2 and 3. Being praised by great sages and saints, and by the inhabitants of Siddhaloka and Cāraṇaloka, Citraketu, the most powerful mystic yogi, wandered about enjoying life for millions of years. With bodily strength and senses free from deterioration, he traveled within the valleys of Sumeru Mountain, which is the place of perfection for various kinds of mystic power. In those valleys, he enjoyed life with the women of the Vidyādhara planet by chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Hari. Purport. It is to be understood that Maharaj Citraketu, although surrounded by beautiful women from Vidyādhara Loka, did not forget to glorify the Lord by chanting the holy name of the Lord. It has been proved in many places that one who is not contaminated by any material condition, who is a pure devotee engaged in chanting the glories of the Lord, should be understood to be perfect. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one thing that struck me as I was reading these few verses and contemplating giving the class is the great contrast between Citraketu's life as a king and longing for the son, and then the whole trauma that he went through when the son was born and was murdered, you know. And if you recall that chapter, he was devastated, first of all, by not having a son, right? You can imagine, here's this king with millions of wives, and none of them could bear him a son. For a king, the son is extremely important, it's hand off the kingdom. So that's all he could think about. You can imagine how, you know, days and nights were absorbed in trying, you know, praying and lamenting that he couldn't have a son. So we know what happened. Angira comes and arranges so that his main wife gets pregnant. And then it's all jubilation. It's so wonderful. And when the boy was actually born, he was in ecstasy, material ecstasy, right? And so much so that he forgot all about the other queens, and they became extremely envious and, what can you say, homicidal. And so they killed the boy, which is... And then then he's flipped to the other side of extreme lamentation. And so here you have the perfect example of the lamentation and jubilation of the material energy, where you're just getting whipped around. And that itself is a kind of misery. It's a traumatic experience that you'll carry with you the rest of your life, So there he was, lamenting, and Angira and Narada come. This time I think Angira comes with Narada, of course. And first of all they instruct him, then they bring the boy back to life, and he's instructing him and saying, really? You're my parents? I've had millions of parents in different species of life, and So it was breaking the whole illusion of this possession of a child, and his whole material life was destroyed. His conception was destroyed there, and it was completely confirmed by Narada's instruction. He gave him this mantra, which is very wonderful, and which he chanted, and he was so serious about advancement. In 7 days, which is, what should we say, a new record. He saw the Lord, and he offered these incredible prayers we had in the last chapter. So there's a complete transformation there. And now here we're seeing the result of that in his attitude. Even though it's kind of surprising. What is this? He's enjoying with the women of Vidyādhara Loka? I mean, didn't he just get... Yeah, by chanting the glories of the Lord. Even though he's surrounded by all kinds of opulence and chances for enjoying, he's not at all in that mood anymore. He's simply chanting the glories of the Lord. And so he has this, incident with Śiva and Parvati, as we'll read. And Parvati is, Śiva doesn't care. He's completely oblivious to it. He's tolerant. But Parvati was greatly offended and curses him to become a demon. So now it seems like he's getting whipped back to the other side, just like when he was so jubilant to have the son, and then so miserable when he was killed. So now it looks like the same thing's happening all over. But actually it's not. Because in spite of the curse, which he accepted, as a matter of course, and just went on his way, and in spite of actually becoming Vṛtrāsura and going through all that trauma, which we heard about, having to fight Indra and having his arms cut off and being, decapitated for a year. It's one thing to be decapitated, but to take a whole year, you can imagine how traumatic that is. But no, he was fixed. He was fixed in this Brahmabhuta platform. Even more than that, but the point is completely equipoised in happiness and distress. So it's quite a lesson here. Of the great value, one of the great values of being completely surrendered to the Lord and being fully Krishna conscious is to be able to go through the vicissitudes of life, the positive and negative, on an even keel. And we see that in so many great devotees. Of course, in our own Srila Prabhupada showed that himself. But you see, like Prahlad, who was tormented by his father, and in so many ways, and Haridas Thakur in a modern age, where he was both sides, right? He's seduced by an attractive young man. He's in the middle of the night, and there was this envious, was it Ramchandra Khan, I think, who was trying to make him fall down. He hires a prostitute. She comes in the middle of the night. Moon is shining, and then he says he could have just left. He said, "I would have just left, but I wanted to save you." So he hangs around and says, "Oh, just listen to me chanting," And so he purifies her and makes her a pure devotee. Then he leaves. So this is a tremendously valuable aspect of Krishna consciousness, of being able to be tolerant, and in both the positive and negative, Just like here he's in Vidyādhara Loka, surrounded by beautiful women, but he's not affected by lust. He's not in the enjoying mood. He's enjoying by chanting the glories of the Lord. Just like we come into Kirtan, like we had this Kirtan with, all of a sudden we have all the, attractive young girls, Krishna conscious girls, but we're just chanting Hare Krishna. Nobody is, it was, you can see, that was Prabhupada's revelation when the movement started to grow, and you had all these attractive women, but everyone going on Harinam, and basically everyone went out as a brahmachari, came out as a brahmachari. I mean, it's not that devotees didn't get married at some time, but the idea that hedonistic era, which I witnessed in the 60s and early 70s, it was built on a very misunderstanding of philosophy. Everyone was doing all kinds of things, dropping drugs. But the basic era was, one of the main themes was, if it feels good, do it. That type of thing, which is suicidal for any kind of spiritual discipline. But in the middle of that, Prabhupada was able to plant the seeds of devotion and show another way how you can enjoy. I like to bring up I've been watching these following Srila Prabhupada's, movies, videos that Yadubara produced. I remembered when he was producing them, and he decided to have this option where you could. He interviewed devotees who were actually there, and they were able to narrate. So that's really the incredible value of the thing. You're watching it going on, and then the devotees are telling you what's happening and intricate things. And he came here. None of you were here at the time. I don't think. Maybe Balaram was here. And he spent months doing transcribing the talk. Like it's just in English. You can just listen to it. But he was trying to sell them a lot of them in England, and they couldn't understand American accent. So they wanted to have it transcribed. So he was spending, because it was winter time and he didn't want to stay in Cāraṇas, so he came down here. He stayed with me for months, my great fortune. And he was transcribing, so you can just read, what they're saying. So what's going on? These incredible scenes, from early ISKCON. My favorite is the 1970 Ratha Yatra, which Maharaj was talking about. Right? He was there. That was his first Ratha Yatra. That was such an incredible scene. There were so many devotees in America. That was the main festival. So they all came from all corners of America and even from England sometimes. So all these devotees. And the carts were built from scratch, across the street from the temple there in Haight-Ashbury. And as Maharaj was telling, there was threats from the Black Panthers, from the Hell's Angels. And what he didn't mention was that, that they didn't want Prabhupada to go. But Brahmananda was trying to convince Prabhupada not to go because there was so much danger, And Prabhupada said, no way, I'm going to the Ratha Yatra. So Gargamuni drove him, but he took a little circuitous route, So Prabhupada wasn't there for the beginning of the Ratha Yatra, when the rumble actually took place. So he came in the middle, and by that time already the Balaram cart was defunct. They only had 2 carts. Yeah, go make sure to get prasad. So anyway, so there's this incredible scene. I remember seeing black and white photos of this that was so inspiring. And then I found there was video. I said, this is incredible. So Prabhupada comes in the middle. By that time there's 2 carts, because the Balaram cart had been defunct. The Subhadra's cart almost messed up too. And Narayan explains on there how he said, one of the wheels had become bent, because they didn't make it, But he had all this army of people. Said, okay, everyone try to straighten the wheel, okay? And like 30 guys, straighten the wheel. And then, yeah. Subhadra's cart. So Prabhupada arrives, everything stops. He dismounted, and Bhavananda had bought this outfit for Prabhupada that was made out of satin from a curtain, So this incredible thing. So he gets out and he starts dancing in front of everyone, And Hayagriva was there playing the drum and all kinds of. It's such a wonderful scene. So, and then the whole thing proceeded, and as it's described, you know, they went down to the sea, and there's all these thousands of devotees, and Prasadam was there, and then there's that scene which they don't show. He didn't go into the family dog auditorium. But it was just, you know, in a few years, he had all these devotees who were practicing strictly and becoming transcendental and realized, we know that, you know, there were certain things that happened later that not all of them are around now, and, you know, they made it through. But still, we know there's nothing lost, everything is auspicious. But the fact that Prabhupada could give a process by which he could be completely happy, you know, and lead a life in which you could tolerate so many of the dualities of the world, difficulties of living in an ashram with 10 other guys, you know, and so many things. So the process works. This is proved. And for those who reach that state of high realization of purity, they're able to tolerate the dualities of this world in incredible ways. And it's shown so many times. Parikshit Maharaj himself, you know, he was insulted because it's described how unusual it was that he became angry at this Brahmin, Shamika Rishi, who was meditating. This is one of the hazards of meditating in the forest, that you're in trance and somebody comes along who you should honor, but you don't honor them, and therefore the thing. So Maharaj Parikshit, you remember the famous snake? He garlanded with a dead snake. And this got back to, who is his son's name? Shringi. And this shows like the beginning of the Kali Yuga, the degradation of the Brahminical class. So he's a Brahmin, but he's a boy. He has the tejas, but he doesn't have the discrimination, you know. And so he curses the king. He curses the Parikshit Maharaj, who's maintaining the whole world, you know. So this is a tremendous mistake. And when Shamika Rishi hears about it, he's very lamenting, you know, that he was involved in it. But he was just meditating. So again, Parikshit, just like Vṛtrāsura, just like Citraketu, he accepts the curse. Says, okay, I'm going to accept it. And so he just gave up his whole kingdom, gave up his regal clothes, sat down on the bank of the Ganges or Yamuna, sometimes it's either one. And then Shukadeva Goswami comes. And that's what the whole context of this Bhagavatam is. He's tolerating, he's not eating, he's not sleeping, he's not drinking. He's just hearing. The essential aspect of hearing, the pure vibrations of the Bhagavatam coming from Shukadeva Goswami. And that's his entire sadhana. Perfect. He's the acharya, or he's the exemplar of hearing in the hearing chanting. In the chanting, of course, Shukadeva Goswami. Hearing, chanting, remembering, Prahlad, right? And then Shravanam Kriya Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam, that's Hanuman. Lakshmi, I'm sorry, thank you, Lakshmi. She's always serving the lotus feet. Archanam is Pritu. I remember I was in Mayapur, and Lokanath Swami asked me about this. He said, we understand Pritu is the acharya for puja, you know, but I can't find in the Bhagavatam anything about him doing deity worship. What is all this about? So I investigated. I couldn't help him. I said, I don't know, because when you read it later on, I read some of the commentaries, and you know, Prabhupada's purpose, of course, all of that worship that he was doing, you know, the sacrifice and everything, and getting the earth going again and all that, that was counted as puja. That, you know, that. So there's Archanam and Vandanam prayers is Akrura. You read the 10th canto or the Krishna book, and you see there's 4 or 5 places where Akrura has these sets of prayers, and the really important prayers. In chapter 40 especially, he has a wonderful set of prayers. So, Vandanam, Dasyam, that's Hanuman. Sakyam is Arjun. And Atmanivedanam is, you know, Bali Maharaj, yeah. He gives everything to Vamana. So, you know, it's important to have good examples, you know. So as we go through the Bhagavatam as these personalities, of course, Shukadeva and Parikshit are always there, and you hear about them. But to see the incredible character like Prahlad Maharaj is just inconceivable, how he could tolerate all that, you know, and just equipoised. All right, boils in oil, Hare Krishna. Can anyone conceive of that? But because he was so fixed, so absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, he was completely protected. It wasn't like he was like agonizing in there and screaming, you know. No, he's just Hare Krishna. You know, and that freaked his father out. Hiranyakashipu couldn't. Where do you get your strength from? You know, because defensive strength, you know, that is also tremendous strength also. So we know what happened to Hiranyakashipu. So this whole pastime is very instructive in many ways, and this is one of the ways in which the things that benefits of advancement in devotional service is this ability to tolerate the dualities of this world. You may remember in the Bhagavad Gita, to be determined in devotional service, you have to be able to transcend the dualities of delusion, or actually the delusion of duality. Yesham Twantakatam Papam Jananam Punyakarmanam Te Dvandva Mohani Mukta Bhajante Mam Judhavata. Krishna says at the end of the chapter, near the end of the chapter 7. And so Prabhupada quotes this verse quite often. Andagatam Papam means the end of your sins, and also I think it also means the end of your sinful reactions. But anyway, no hint of sin. This is to have real firm determination in devotional service. Yesham andagatam bhavam jananam punya karmanam, simply performing pious activities, which in this case means Krishna conscious activities. Ye dvandva mohani mukta, and to thus be free from the delusion of duality, which means to think, oh, this is good, this is bad. I got to go for this and avoid this on the material platform. That's what material life all is, right? Is that the dualities. Okay, now I got it together. Everything is arranged. But this is, this is not a good scene. I have to work against that one, try to cure it, And in the process of doing that, you lose the other one. It's always a struggle to come to that point and you never can. In this material world, everything is constantly changing. And it's built in such a way, and we have such a history, for those who have no involvement with Krishna consciousness, which Krishna says famously, he eradicates your sinful reactions. You surrender unto him. So you get beyond the dualities that way. But for materialists, they're just running through the program that's already been done in their past life. This comes at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, chapter 5. That famous verse, Tasyaiva heto, prayateta kovido, nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyada. Talabhyate. Thanks for visiting. Hare Krishna. Please enjoy the prasad. Come back. Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido, nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyada. Talabhyate dukkavadan yutaksukam kālaina sarvata gabhira rangasa. So kala and gabhir mean by the subtle, invisible workings of time and your karma, you're going to get a certain amount of happiness, a certain amount of distress in this life. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have so much money and so much poverty. It's a question of the happiness and distress. So therefore, it's already programmed in. It's simply an illusion to try to work very hard to get a better material position in this life, and work very hard to counteract the miseries. It's quite a realization. Then what should we strive for? You don't just sit like a dead stone. Prayateta means to strive as hard as possible for what you cannot achieve by going up to Brahmaloka and down to Patalaloka. Prayateta, kovido, the intelligent person. Nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyada, from wandering to the highest planet, the lowest planet, at brahmatam. In other words, there's nothing in this material world you should strive for. But while in the material world, you should strive for getting out of the material world, what's not available. In other words, Krishna consciousness. This is Prabhupada quoted this verse all the time. And there's no loss of diminution. That's also Chaktvasva Dharmam, is the next verse, the previous verse, is that if someone gives up his material duties in this world and joins the Hare Krishnas, let's say, and takes up devotional service, but doesn't complete the course in this life, falls away, yoga brashta, right? Then where is there any loss, right? Suchinam Shrimatam Gehe, Neha Bhikramanashosti, Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita. There's no loss of diminution. You pick up where you left off. I was just hearing a tape today where Prabhupada says, once you start Krishna consciousness, you're trapped. You can't get out. Eventually, you're going to be a devotee this life, next life. You may struggle against it, but so that's very encouraging for devotees. But there's no point in material effort. That's the whole point. How many times did Prabhupada talk about the skyscraper buildings, building and breaking, building and breaking? He's watching in New York. They're working so hard to try to create a situation of what do you really want? Peace and happiness, right? You're trying to, but the material world won't let you do that. There's always something coming around. The weather is going crazy, the economy is going crazy, your wife is going crazy, your husband's going crazy, right? Things just don't work out in the crises. Adi-daivic miseries. You tell me, I have a question for you. Here we have these incredible heat waves going on and floods, and it's just, the ice caps are melting. Is that Adi-daivic or is it Adi-bhautic? I mean, it's both, isn't it? It's in the form of Adi-daivic, but yeah, human beings have caused it by pumping out all these gases. It doesn't make any difference. It's unavoidable, you try to counteract it. So the thing is, the main point is this idea of tolerance. Brahma bhuta prasana na shochati na kaṅchati. To not be being whipped around by the material conditions, but to be fixed in your path of Krishna consciousness. And understanding that Krishna will protect. Okay, sometimes, I heard a story years ago about a mother and daughter. They were flying somewhere in India, and the plane went down. They died. So the real question is, what were they doing as the plane went down? Probably chanting Hare Krishna. I'll tell you a story about Badri Narayan Maharaj, which he doesn't tell so much anymore. He's got so many stories. I said, Maharaj, you have to write your memoirs. He says, I'm planning. When he retires, he's going to write a book about all his stories. So he's going to India. You can imagine how many times he's gone to India as a GBC since 1987. And sometimes more than once a year. So he's flying the western route across the Pacific, Singapore Air, something like that, nice airline. But he knows from experience there's a certain point off the Japanese coast where the turbulence is going to start, He knows that. So he described, you don't know who you're going to sit next to. At that time, now I think he gets business class because of his diabetes, he needs to rest. But there, to save money, find regular cabin. So he's sitting next to this woman who's all dressed up and and makeup and everything, wearing a fancy hat, and she's looking at him. So he doesn't try to talk to her or anything. He's just reading his book, chanting. So she's, you can see she has disdain. Who's this guy? So then the turbulence starts. Did anyone hear this story? You must have heard about it. And it's serious. This turbulence. That's why you keep your seatbelt on when you're just sitting. Why should I do that? Because if the turbulence starts, it can dive quickly. You go up to the ceiling, you hit your head, you can die. So anyway, it's that kind of turbulence, it was going crazy. So what was Maharaj doing? What do you think he was doing? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. What else are you going to do? So he's chanting like that. She's freaking out, screaming, and her hat's going crazy, So after it's all over, naturally, it's calmed down, which Maharaj knew would happen. She, in her stage, says, well, what were you doing? You didn't seem so... So he was able to tell her about Krishna consciousness. But there have been, it happened to, who was that? Narahari. He tells the story also, where he was flying and the plane, looked like it was going to go down. He was chanting, he came through it. And so that's our response. How many times do you have to read it in a Krishna book? So many dangers come, and seem death is on the, ready. It's the fire, it's the Vṛtrāsura, it's Indra going crazy with, doing everything. So what do the devotees do? They call out to Krishna and helplessness. Krishna, 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 Krishna. That's what, Hare Krishna. So that means that you have a means of dealing with these crises rather than just going nuts, becoming completely terrified, and succumbing to that mode. Both extreme anger and extreme fear are in the mode of ignorance, actually. So this is being illustrated here. What is this? I just, I realized Narayan. I saw, I offer these wonderful prayers. Now I get this nice airplane. I'm driving around. And now I have to become a demon? What the heck is that? He doesn't say like that. He says, okay, we're good, And even as a demon, demon, he's not really a demon, he looks like a demon. His whole purpose is, how can I speed up the process so the Indra will finally kill me and get rid of this body so I go back to Godhead? So devotees are if you're really Krishna conscious, you live in a different world really, even though you're still in this material world. How many times have we trained in the Bhagavatam to see Krishna everywhere? Through the workings of the material energy, you see the spirit soul, in the plants, in the insects, in everyone. That's a very important point, because then you respect every living entity. It's not that, this is one of the main problems in today. There's massive meat eating going on, which is that, if you do a little research, that is a big cause of global warming. Did anyone know that? Have you know that? Because of the methane they give off. And plus, it's so sinful, but in and of itself, it's helping to destroy the planet. So devotees, try to give this knowledge, as Maharaj was explaining, let everyone become happy. What's it? Sarve sukhino bhavantu, something like that. There's a phrase like that. But how can everyone be happy? You can't if your happiness derives from exploiting other people. Then the people who get exploited are not going to be happy. It's always going to be. But if your happiness derives here from glorifying the Lord together, then everybody becomes you're not exploiting them. You're simply giving them Krishna consciousness and taking their Krishna consciousness and glorifying the Lord. It's just like a kirtan. A really ecstatic kirtan. You look around and say, everybody is the source of your happiness, and you're also giving happiness by chanting, isn't it? It's ideal. And Krishna's pleased because you're glorifying Him, enjoying and chanting the holy name. It's a perfect sacrifice for this age. So that is all coming out here, that he's now cursed, but he's taking it in stride, and eventually he'll be exalted and go back to Godhead. So this is part of the great drama that we're witnessing now with Citraketu, and it's very instructive. Okay, any comments, questions? Dvijamani Prabhu.
Thank you very much for a nice class.
Hare Krishna.
I have two small questions about, so Citraketu was already glorified, he was on the stage of love of God. Is this his position? Yeah. Then why in the future, now we see that he was enjoying chanting in the presence of women from Vidyādhara Loka.
Vidyādhara Loka.
Yeah, so it didn't affect him, but why is that when he saw Lord Śiva, another exemplary devotee, being in the presence of Parvati, and they being together, then why he started laughing if he did the same thing?
I think it was the context, the fact that there he is in the middle of all these sages and saints, In other words, just like here, if, well, I'm not going to go there, but the thing is, he's in a position, of being worshipped, really, for being Lord Śiva, which is, it seemed to be a kind of a ludicrous means something that makes you laugh, situation, that he would be engaging in that way with Parvati in the middle of this conclave of great sages and saints and rishis and worshippers in that regard. I think that's what it was. Not that he was, that he was consorting with his wife Parvati, but it was the context. So that's what happened. I mean, why he laughed. It's all part of the arrangement, so that he can become Vṛtrāsura and get that lesson too. Anyone else?
This is Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. In the beginning of your prayer, you say all members of Sri Parampara. Sri Parampara means Sri Parampara or just a respect to Parampara?
respect the parampara.
Okay, that gets confused. I thought I'd ask.
No, we're in the Brahma Sampradaya.
Yeah, that's what. Like Sri Parampara means Sri Sampradaya, like that. So, okay.
Could be, yeah.
Thank you. Another question I have from here. The verse it says, after he offered obeisances where the Narayan, Ananta disappeared that direction, and then he became head of Vidyādharas. It is very transient. So he was King Citraketu offering prayers to the Ananta, and then suddenly he became head of Vidyādharas.
But didn't it say before that that's where he was originally? That he was originally Vidyādhara?
No.
Why Vidyādhara Loka rather than some other Loka?
King Citraketu was, I don't know what is the location when this happened.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to research. I thought there was they had some connection before, and that he returned to there. That he went back there.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but this isn't the first we're hearing about Vidyādhara Loka, if I understand. But anyway, let me look. I would hazard a guess. I don't want to guess. Why is that by Vidyādhara Loka? But the thing is, even in Vidyādhara Loka, with all the facilities here, he's not losing his Krishna consciousness, because it's kind of almost like in those valleys he enjoyed life with the women of Vidyādhara Loka. If it ended there with periods, say, well, what is this? No, by chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality. So even there, he was kirtan. That's the idea.
Confusion. So Vidyādhara planet, and he is in this Satyalokas, like the higher planetary systems, right?
Yeah, Satyalokas.
So the people are mostly very highly elevated. Even if it is Omen, they are highly elevated. Yeah. It's not like here we think from earthly planet where Omens men's and Omens are spoiled, but there the thing is you don't usually think of Vidyādhara Loka as a place where you find a lot of pure devotees. They're devotees, otherwise they'd be down the hellish planets. But it's usually sakama, bhakti rather than akama. And so I don't want to speculate. Maybe we'll get something from further commentaries. Why he thought, he could. What's the point, of hanging around in Vidyādhara Loka? And what was, why Vidyādhara Loka, which is not normally a place where you find, it's not the spiritual world, but it's a higher planet, means they're devotees. But like we have with Indra on those planets, there's sometimes the lower energy takes over, and so you may say, well, that's why he was tempted to joke when he shouldn't have really joked. He shouldn't have laughed like that. But be that as it may, he wants to get. He's ready to get out of Vidyādhara Loka also, but unfortunately the route is through the body of Vṛtrāsura and all that kind of hair-raising battle and all that stuff that he's going to go through. But he's taking it in his stride. He said, okay, now I'm getting cursed, so we're going to go through it. And it's similar with Parvati, that he when he got cursed, he said, all right, let it happen. I'm not going to fight it. It's mentioned there that he could have counteracted. He had the power, but he accepted it. His whole situation changed. He had 7 days to live, and it concentrated his mind tremendously. They say, there's a saying on the material side, imminent execution really concentrates your mind. I don't know what to do with that concentration. But for Parvati, he said, okay, I've got so many minutes and hours left, it's limited, so I'm going to use every moment, no sleep, no eat, no nothing, just sit and hear. And then the greatest speaker came, and so the whole thing is coming. And that's where the Bhagavat Saptaha came from, obviously. But who has the qualifications of Maharaj Pariksit? And they don't listen to the whole thing in 7 days. You have to pick and choose. It's perversion, So that's why Prabhupada set up these classes, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, constantly, so that hopefully we can be purified and be alive by the time we get to the 10th canto. Association he had with Omens.
same time glorifying the Lord.
Yeah, glorifying.
Which may have kind of
It may have, induced some,
fixed, right?
It's a little risky. We don't want to try that program. It's okay. And then the girls come in the kirtan, we'll have a big kirtan, but that's about it. Yeah. Although we had a nice session. I did some. I had a slideshow that I did years ago on the Krishna Katashtaka, which is 8 verses in the 12th canto, all about wonders of chanting and hearing, the Lord. And I did that slideshow, and then we did Indranila, and they got some. But I forgot to tell them one thing, so I'll tell you. I don't hear it so much. The song, the Panchatattva mantra, sometimes it induces you to say, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara. That Nityananda is not his name. It's Nityananda. Nityananda. And then I finally figured out what Nityananda actually means. What is it? Nitya? Na? Anda. Eternally without any eggs. Anda means eggs. It doesn't mean universe. The universe is compared to an egg. And Anda is an egg. No. Nityananda. Eternally blissful. But this is the way that the song, and I see they all grew up in the movement. None of them flinched. They've all said, Nityananda, Shri Advaita. So the pronunciation can be very important. Yes, we know Bhava Grahi Janardana, and that's all about pronunciation, right? Isn't it? Mukha Vadati Vishnaya Dhira Vadati Vaishnave. Vishnave. But I forget the third line. But both get the same benefit because Bhava Grahi Janardana. Not Bhava Grahi Janardana. Bhava Grahi Janardana. Because Janardana, he's looking for the feeling, But I always think, okay, that's fine. But isn't part of the feeling that after a certain point you find out how to pronounce it correctly and do that? That's also part of it. Just like if you're cooking, beginning of cooking, you may not cook so expertly, but you put plenty of love and devotion into it. That's good. But then 10 years later, you're still just making the same prep and making the same mistakes. Where's the Baba? You see, part of the feeling is learning how to do your service better. Is to try to improve the service. So I don't hear too many Nityanandas here, so that's good. But it's dangerous, just like with Vanchakalpatari Bhishcha, which I won't explain again. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bol. So text 4 tomorrow, 4 and 5.